Hey guys, Eric here. Welcome to Rant and Review. In this video, we're going to be talking about The Boys Season 4, Episode 5, otherwise titled Beware the Jabberwock, My Son. So careful for spoilers if you're not caught up with The Boys this season. You've been warned. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the entire segment in this episode dedicated to Huey, his dad, his mom, and this V thing in the hospital, and how absolutely gruesome the scenes were in this portion of the episode. Just all the gross stuff that was happening with his father and the body parts and phasing in and out of people. I was thoroughly disgusted by every single moment of it. But this is what The Boys does, so I kind of expected it. Let's talk about the emotional beats of it and my concern about this story moving forward. So we finally get the answer of who put the V into the IV to save his father, and it was, in fact, his mother. I did not like this aspect of the story. I thought it was just a little contrived because it just, to me, didn't make a lot of sense for her to do it. But we needed to get to that point. She was the easiest character to give that to, and it allowed her to give Huey this emotional moment where forgiveness could be given to her because of everything that happened. So it did serve a purpose. It still felt contrived. My opinions about that have a lot to do with where this episode ends up in terms of Huey's storyline this season. So we have his father come back, and everything seems to be fine in the beginning, but we all knew that wasn't going to be the case. This is the Boys universe, and no one gets off that easy. And so his dad is eating and chatting and talking, and nothing seems too out of the ordinary. And then we notice that he's like forgetting things and misremembering and sort of repeating himself. Things like that were happening. And so they notice something is wrong. When Huey gets up to find his dad, he sees him in a room, kind of standing over the side of a bed, not responding to him, not answering him. Comes to find out that he's able to phase inside of people, and he has the heart of the person in his hand. Now, in the Boys universe, and I'm going to talk about consistency here for a second, and the possibility that maybe we just didn't get the answers to the questions. His dad can phase through objects, walls, people, things. So my question is, when he runs through the wall the first time, we really get to see him use his power. The person's heart falls on the ground. So that gives me the impression that something that is not biologically connected to him cannot phase through the objects that he's phasing through. Then I thought, well, what about the hospital gown? What about the blood on his hands? Those are things that are not biologically attached to him. I started to question that, and I'm like, he's also standing on the floor when he's running through the wall. How do these powers work? And the only reason I ask this question is because on The Boys, there's always a downside to the powers that makes sense realistically, if you guys are following me on that. So I was like, why would his robe stay on? Why would blood stay on his skin? Why would these things happen? And I got in my head a little bit with that. It happens. However, I think it was cool to have a character that could phase through stuff. The deaths because of that were extremely gruesome. It was very frightening when he started talking to his ex, Huey's mom. We got that foreboding feeling as people were trying to stop him and they were trying to get away. And then we find out there's no way for him to continue to go on like this because he is a threat to everybody. And so Huey has to make the decision. His mom have to make the decision to terminate his father. And so they do that, and it looks like now, and this was my complaint earlier about the stuff with his mom and the forgiveness and everything. What is Huey's story for the rest of the season? Where do we go from here? Is this in the storyline? Is that it? Are we closing the door on that? Now Huey is going to be just a supporting side character to everything for the rest of the season? I don't know. It feels a little weird to end the storyline so early when everybody else's storylines are continuing beyond this episode. So unless something with him and his mom continues on, I think this is it for that storyline. Unless his father comes back somehow. But that would kind of ruin the emotional moments in this episode. And we don't get a lot of them on The Boys. So this one paid off for me. All right, let's talk about the stuff with Butcher, Victoria, Stan, Edgar, and the rest of the boys with this adventure to the farm, which felt like it was ripped directly out of Doom Patrol for me. This was so ridiculous. The levity was there, but it felt ridiculous to me. It felt like it was ripped out of Doom Patrol. But this whole premise is that Butcher lets everybody in on the virus that can eliminate soups, make them sick, and they'll eventually die from it. He lets them in on this, and they decide that they need Stan Edgar because of Victoria Newman and finding out where the virus is so they can get it and use it because they think it'll help them against Homelander. And so they come up with this idea of giving a pardon to Edgar, to Stan Edgar, in exchange for his help with the situation. We go to the farm's ransacked. We find out there's some other stuff happening there, and the animals are souped up on V. So we have like this ridiculous situation where sheep are flying, chickens are jumping through people, rabbits have tentacles coming out of them, which gives us a little idea of what's going to be happening with Butcher. He gets to see this and starts to make him wonder what's happening with him. And of course, that's going to be somebody mentioned in my comments, and I completely forgot about this. They talked about this in the Boys animated series, Diabolical, where there are like tumors that get V into them, and those tumors become sentient. And that could be what's going on here with Butcher. We see it with the rabbit, and it freaks him out, and he starts thinking about it. So maybe that's the case. I don't know. But then we deal with this whole mess at the farm, and this is kind of it's a graphic, funny thing. They find out that Zoe's father, who is there, by the way, shout out with Godolkin University. There's a lot of mentions of like the Gen V stuff. We even get to see some of the characters from Gen V in this episode. Shout out to them. We see the father there talking about the virus, how it was created, et cetera, et cetera. And so they aren't able to get what they need. Stan goes back to prison. Don't know if we're going to see him again. But this whole segment, this whole moment here, to me, felt a little out of place on The Boys. I'm trying to think back, was there anything this ridiculous? We had the stuff on Gen V with like the puppets. That was kind of ridiculous, but it fit in with that, with the show. This to me felt a little ridiculous for The Boys. It was funny, don't get me wrong. Seeing animals on V, the bull on V, the flying around sheep and stuff, it was funny. But I don't know, it took me out a little bit. But it is interesting now they've introduced the idea of this virus. It is now something that is known to our characters. Kamiko, Starlight, obviously at risk for being hurt by this. They don't seem all too happy about it. But we'll see where this goes. This seems like a major shift in the storyline, and this is going to play out into the remainder of the season very clearly. We don't get a ton of Homelander in this episode, but we get some really important stuff with him and Ryan that I think is worth talking about. So Ryan clearly doesn't want to be involved with like all of this fake Hollywood stuff that his dad and the rest of the seven are involved in. And so when the producer's there talking about the idea of this, you know, basically a Teen Titans TV series with Ryan, he's not interested in it. He doesn't want extra money. He doesn't want cars. None of that matters to him. He just wants to do something different. And so this is when Homelander tries to tell Ryan that, like, look, I don't want you to be controlled by anybody the way I was controlled about anybody. And so you start to think that maybe there's some good intentions there, but as it always is with Homelander and how it will always be, there's an ulterior motive, and Homelander always has something insidious going on. And so when Ryan says he actually wants to help people, he tells Ryan to go after the producer because they make it out as the producer is being inappropriate with one of his assistants. Goes out of his way to teach the producer a lesson. And although he absolutely was a piece of shit and definitely should have had something done about everything that was happening, there's no question about that. Homelander gets off on having Ryan punish the producer to make him grovel and apologize and kneel here. And so you see that Homelander is indoctrinating Ryan. He's grooming Ryan into being another version of him by tricking Ryan into thinking that he is being a good person. And this is super insidious, and it's not going to turn out well for us if this actually works. We didn't get a lot of it this week, but again, stellar work on the Homelander story. Just so well done. All right, so we have to talk about one of the best parts of the episode, and this was the V52 Expo, which is basically like a D23 Expo thing. It's like Vought trying to be Disney, where we have the heroes going out and advertising upcoming projects. Some of it was a bit ridiculous, but funny. And you start to see that satire that people have complained about coming back to the show. And one of the funniest things was they had up this like, basically like all the phases of the Vought products that were coming out. And it was just very reminiscent of like the Marvel and the DC phase projects, the things you would see where it has all the different like movies coming out, TV shows coming out. And they had this new technology where they could actually do product placement in the hands of the people on screen. So if you're a white person, you see one type of product. If you're a black person, you see another type of product. I assume it would also be for gender and sexuality and all of that stuff, where the product placement is basically geared towards you, which is very like Minority Report stuff, where people are able to be advertised to directly when they walk into rooms and stuff like that. So it's kind of in the same vein of that, but also very much like The Boys. So no real complaints about that. But it's just really interesting. Like all of this was really cool to see all the different things they supposedly are, these fake like Vought movies that we're going to see coming out eventually. I thought that was really good. Let's talk about the stuff with A-Train. All right, so ever since the stuff happened with A-Train and Huey, we've seen this interesting, I don't want to say redemption arc, but maybe redemption arc with A-Train, where he seems to be making decisions that are going to help or assist with taking down Homelander, because he's not a Homelander fan at all, in the least. However, Sage has suspicions. I knew it was only a matter of time before she thought something was going on. Now, I'm not totally sure if she knows exactly what's happening or if she's just suspicious of A-Train, because it's a little bit on the nose when she's having some interactions with him. But then we find out, because Cameron Coleman breaks things off with Ashley. He no longer wants to be involved with her as his dom. He's submissive. She's his mistress. He decides he wants to break things off with her because of her like spiraling with everything that's happening this season. And so she plants fake information on his phone that makes it look like he is the leak with everything that's going on with the Seven. And so that sort of exonerates A-Train in the eyes of the rest of the team. So won't have to worry about that, I'm guessing. However, I still think Sage is onto him and thinks that he had something to do with it. Maybe that information will get dropped in the next episode. And lastly, before I give my final thoughts, I want to give a shout out to the Firecracker stuff with her bringing this like religious angle to Vought. She felt literally like a backseat character this week. There really wasn't much about her other than the stuff with Starlight and her mentioning like bringing charges against her and all this other stuff. But it's very shocking to me that Vought waited this long to have like a dedicated like religious culty type of series type of thing on their network. But Firecracker is bringing it. So my final thoughts before I give my score are, I enjoyed the episode. I think it was pretty good. A few things that I did not mention in the overall review I just want to bring attention to is Janine, MM's daughter, who seems to have some anger issues because of what's going on with him. Whether that becomes anything else this season or they hold off for next season, we'll have to wait and see. Also, I think that the show sometimes confuses their satire, because when Cameron Coleman talked about like lifting up BIPOC voices, like this guy has the Cameron Coleman Hour, I believe that's the name of the show on Vought, that is literally like a play on a Fox News type show, or even something more extreme, like maybe like Alex Jones or something along those lines. It seems like it's a very extreme far right show. So why would he be supporting lifting up BIPOC voices when that would give away the grift that he does on his show? I thought that was a little strange as well, but there it is. I enjoyed this episode. I don't think it was as strong as last week. I think that it was good to see some of the storylines evolve a little bit and change. It was kind of interesting to see that Huey's storyline seemed to be coming to an end. The Homelander stuff is also evolving, which I enjoy. I think there was a few issues with some of the stuff with the boys themselves, like when Butcher went to the farm, where things felt a bit out of place. I don't know what's going to be happening with Zoe's father, how that's going to play out any further than now, if he's going to come back, how that's going to fall into the place with all of this. I'm not totally sure, but I was happy with the episode. I think it was a pretty good episode. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Like, not my favorite of the season, I will admit, but we still have some episodes left. I think there's still a lot of story to tell. And so I'm excited to see where some of these things go. I'm a little bit nervous about Huey's storyline. I don't exactly know what's in store for that, but I'm going to try and stay optimistic about it because The Boys has been really solid so far. So let me know if you agree or disagree with any of this in the comments down below. Did I not talk about something that you wanted to talk about? What are your overall thoughts on everything to do with The Boys this season and where we're at right now? I'm very curious. So let me know down below. If you enjoy this content, hit subscribe, become part of the Airrickverse, and definitely leave your thoughts in the comment section. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.